Welcome to Auto Off Topic. Hello, Brad.
Good evening, Andrew. How are you?
I'm okay. Sorry about the last episode. I guess I made a little goof on the audio mix. It was a little too quiet. So then I quickly removed that one and put up one that had better audio. So if you started listening to the last episode, it was too quiet. Go back in your feed. It should have updated. It says better audio quality or louder audio in
Okay.
in the title. So
The very
simple
important
enough.
things we say can be heard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
very
was just
important.
like a couple ticks because we use two different mics, so there's some balancing I got to do, and then it just like I thought I had it because I'm normally pretty good at it, and I
Would
don't
it be
know.
easier if I bought the same mic as you?
Maybe who knows?
Hmm.
I assume it is because this one has gain on it, and yours doesn't have any gain knob.
I do not. Mine's just a standard, like, blue
Yeah,
snowball. But I
yeah,
would be willing to purchase another mic if it makes things better. So shoot me a link to what you have and we'll give it a go. If it makes it easier for you to edit the podcast every week, why not, right?
yeah. And then I'm like further back from the mic to try to even it out, but
Okay.
when
Well, it's funny because I can watch the wave files, and this is obviously, pretty inside track stuff here. I can watch the wave files, and your wave files are much larger than my wave files.
always,
So
always.
that could be because of that gain issue.
So anyway,
All right. Well, we'll take a look at that.
back to
It's funny because I'm doing what you do for our podcast for that other podcast that I'm working on now.
yeah.
So I'm doing a podcast for work, which annoyingly, work is called Auto Hunter. So it's very difficult for me to start saying Auto Hunter and not say Auto Off Topic when recording, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So not my fault that the name's the same because Auto Off Topic existed long before Auto Hunter, and it is what it is. So
Yeah.
I haven't done it yet. It's almost come off the tongue a couple times. It hasn't happened yet. So anyway, what's going on, Andrew? What's new? What's good?
I don't know. You had some car news for me because I apparently missed all these things or I ignored them.
Yeah, you've been busy working or something, and I've been busy also working. If my
But
boss
you have more
listens,
car stuff
yeah, I work in a
about for
car.
work.
I work in a car environment, so stuff gets talked about, and I work in a car environment with a crowd of people who are into like modern stuff. So I learn some stuff about modern stuff. Normally, we don't do much modern stuff here, but the two main things I want to talk about are pretty important in the world of car enthusiasts. One of them is that Porsche came out with a new 911 SC. So they're calling the SC for the Sport Classic, I think. And it's kind of a throwback to Porsches of past. It's going to be a manual transmission only, and it's going to be a two-wheel drive only. And while Porsche sells the new 911 in a turbo, the new 911 turbo is only available with an automatic, and the 911 SC is going to have the turbo and a manual transmission. So at least it has that like throwback to old Porsches. Obviously, this is a car we don't care too much about because it's way outside of our purview of buying power. But it's interesting and cool to see that Porsche, who we know is working on the biofuel kind of thing, where they're trying to make fuels that will exist in the future that can be sustainable, and so old cars can run forever. They're also keeping with the manual transmission in these special edition cars. So it is neat to note that's coming out. Pretty cool car. I'll like to see one. They put a bunch of cool touches on it. It's got a neat little duckbill spoiler. It's got a bunch of throwback stuff. It's got like number meatballs on the side. It's actually a pretty sweet car. So I can't wait to see one. It's cool that it's coming out. In news that will tick off the purists, Corvette announced through a Instagram post, a social media post in general, I guess. And they didn't say much about it, but the post starts with a Corvette in full camo parked on a like snowy field, and the camera is panned in on the front wheel of the car. And as the car accelerates, you see the front wheel start spinning,
Yeah.
meaning that they're going to be making a presumably all-wheel drive, not front-wheel drive Corvette. And then what the teaser was is that the Corvette is going to be made in both hybrid and full electric coming out in the next couple of years. So it's like an official announcement that Corvette's like, yep, we're doing this. We're making a hybrid and we're also going to make a full electric. So in doing a little bit of research, the GM electric motor, which they use in like the Hummer, what's the Hummer called? the big Hummer EV, Hummer,
Oh, I don't know.
Hummer
Hummer
E,
EV, I thought.
Hummer E. I don't know. There's a name for it, but so the Hummer uses two of these motors, and they're like 312 horsepower each.
Yeah.
Supposedly, Corvette's going to use one of them to drive the front wheels. So you have your 500 horsepower plus 300 horsepower. That to me equals an 800 horsepower Corvette, which
See,
is pretty cool.
what if it was, hey guys, we finally put the engine in the back, but now it's driving the front wheels?
Maybe they did that, but I don't think they did that. So it's an RF, a rear front drive.
Yeah. I mean,
has that ever existed?
It's probably some French car.
Yeah, probably. If anybody did it, it was the French. Yeah, I don't think that ever existed. I think that would be a first.
I bet it's I bet like a early like brass era car is set up that way.
There's probably something way back then. Yeah, something before cars got more standardized when they were trying all new things. But anyway, so they're announcing that, and there's talk of 1,000 horsepower version as well. And
yeah,
I mean,
it's just a matter of motor tuning.
Yeah, the purists are pretty mad about it, but how can he be mad about 1,000 horsepower Corvette?
Purists? There's no Corvette purists.
Right. That's
because the newest Corvette is the best Corvette, so it doesn't really matter.
So I would like for you to go onto their Instagram page and read the comment section below this announcement and tell me that there are no Corvette purists. There are some
because they literally clamor to buy the best newest one.
There are some pretty mad people in this comment thread. In fact, I would say that it's 90-10 split mad to happy about it. In the comments. It might not be the real world, but it's the comments.
Those people aren't going to buy the thing anyways.
Well, I think the big thing is that Chevrolet probably sees that, wait a second, our core New Balance jort wearing Corvette owners are dying, and we might as well embrace the youth that are going to be buying these in the future. So,
is it going to be less than the NSX?
I mean, it's a Chevrolet. They came out with the Corvette, and they're like, this is basically a Ferrari. How much is it going to cost? $69,999. So I'm sure this will be like $85,000 because that's just what they've been doing.
Because it really sounds like the way the NSX was set up.
Yeah, probably pretty much. I mean, it's a common supercar thing.
Making those, right?
Yeah, this is the last year. There's a few special editions this year. But the new Ferrari, 350.
458?
Nope.
396?
390.
Sure, just say it.
Oh, God, I hate... Ferrari... Ferrari alphabet soup. The new Ferrari 390... I'm going to look it up because it's bothering me. 296. The Ferrari 296.
The 296.
296 GTB is going to be the same way. It's going to be rear-engined V6. Actually, the first Ferrari production car, street car, with a Ferrari badge, not counting Dino's, to have a factory V6. And it's going to have electric motor drive in the front wheels. But that car is going to be $322,000. So, assumably the Corvette will be, 1/3 that price at the most. So I think it's interesting. I think it's neat. I'm glad the American manufacturers are keeping up with that stuff. I'm also glad that there's people who will buy it. I'm also glad that there are people who hate it because it's funny to watch the interactions between them. But the good thing is that while there is no manual transmission in the new Corvette, some of the specs that were leaked were documents from Tremec, where they're actually developing a manual transmission for this setup. So that should be interesting. Yeah. Whether or not it will ever come out, who knows? But they're working on something.
Pretty sure back in the day, I mean, one of the Duntov designs was like a 4-wheel-drive Corvette at some point.
I do not remember.
I'm pretty sure they had thought about it.
They had some weird like rear engine and rotary engine and all kinds of other Corvette things.
Yeah, they had all kinds of stuff they were trying to figure out.
There could have been a 4-wheel-drive one in the past. Who knows? But
so
anyway, this time it's actually happening.
There's no such thing as purists in my mind for Corvettes.
Well, I think that most older Corvette buyers, and I hate to say older, but probably true, most older Corvette buyers are kind of purists about it. That's why you have the, buy the new Corvette, park it in your garage, drive it 13 miles a year so you save the value of it for whatever. And then it winds up not being worth anything anyway. But they still do it every year.
Oh, that's why all these C5s and C6s are becoming drift machines.
Yeah, because they're so cheap.
Dirt cheap.
Yeah, they're so cheap. But the thing is that people save them all the time and they've been doing it since the 70s Corvettes, and not once has it worked out in their favor, and they continue to do it. I don't understand why. buy a brand new car, make payments on it, park it, and then expect to make tons of money on it in 20 years, and you don't every time. So, whatever. It's Corvette people. Those are the Corvette purists I'm talking about. So, moving on from new car news. Last car news segment of the day that happened in the past week. Do you remember the final Honda S2000 CR editions?
Of course.
I think it was like a club racer is probably what it stood for, if I remember correctly.
Had a front lip and a rear wing.
Front lip, rear wing, and a hard top.
Mm-hmm.
Did they have soft tops too, or did they just have a hard top? They might have just had a hard top.
No, I think they had soft tops, but
It was optional.
It included the factory hard top, I think, for club racing.
So anyway, one just sold on our favorite site to make fun of car prices on, Bring a Trailer.
Yep.
So this is a 2009 Honda S2000.
Okay. AP2.
Yep, I brought this up to you before we started, and you had not heard of this sale yet. So
no, I missed it. We're
going to make this your game here. The car has 123 miles on it. So unlike Corvette buyers who squirrel their cars away and hope to make money, it doesn't work. But does it work with Hondas? What do you think this 2009 Honda S2000 CR sold for?
$150,000.
You are off by a significant margin.
Really?
Yes.
Like low?
Yes.
Or high?
You are low.
I'm low?
You are low. Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yep.
$200K.
$200,000 on the nose.
Wow.
For 2009 Honda S2000.
No.
Yeah.
They're good cars and they drive really well, but they're not worth $200K.
So a 2009, well, again, it's not going to be driven. It's going to be parked in a...
No, because as soon as you put miles on it, it's not worth $200K.
Well, the last low mile one that sold for $100K and it had like 2,000 miles on it. So the difference between 120 miles and 2,000 miles is apparently $100,000. So it doesn't make any sense. Now, I did a little digging into the guy who bought it. And I was looking at his other purchases on Bring a Trailer. And it's clearly just going to sit in a garage and probably be parked next to all these other cars. So there's no reason that you'll ever see this car be driven. It doesn't mean anything except for it's like buying a piece of art at this point. The same person who bought it also bought the Tim Allen Ford GT that sold for $1 million. So it's not going to be ever driven.
Ford GT that was owned by Tim Allen. That's it.
So it was the first not Mark. What do you call it? The second gen of the modern GTs. It was the first one of those to break $1 million. Okay. It was $1 million or $2 million or whatever it was. It was stupid money.
Like the ones that came out in like 2015.
Yes, the second generation of the newer ones. Yeah. So. I'm trying to find a link here for it, but my computer's not.
The only reason why it's worth money because Tim Allen farted in it.
I don't think that's the case. I think that it just happened to be that Tim Allen owned it. It happened to be like it's a rare color combo, and it's a rare. Again, it had no miles on it, and this guy had $1 million to buy it, and it is what it is. So his username on Bring Trailer is Nico 2015. So, and he bought this car for $200,000. He bought a 98 NSX for $195,000. So he's bought a bunch of stuff for stupid money. So he's not the only one. Obviously, somebody else is bidding. He bought a 19 911 GT2 for $600,000. So he spends a lot of money on cars here. He paid $1 million for the 700-mile 2017 Ford GT. I mean, he paid $50,000 for a Myers Manx. That's the kind of
okay.
Yeah.
Whatever, Chase Bliss, man.
Yeah, I don't understand it, but maybe he's got other delivery mile cars. He bought an SSR for $45,000. So
yep.
He's
all right. So speaking of big dollar auction buyers, how's about that Cressida? How's that going?
Oh yeah, world record price.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my world record price Cressida, only because it's the only 81 Cressida to have been sold on an online auction that's been tracked, which makes me, automatically the winner there. Has had some pretty big strides this past week.
Yeah.
It went from where did we leave it off last week? Had I put the tank back in? I don't think so.
Yeah, you had it back. I think you did.
No, because I did it
Or
last.
you
I
were
did it
you were waiting on lines, I
waiting on
think.
hoses. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
last Friday night, I went to put the tank back in the car. So all the new lines were in. The new fuel pump was in. Everything was ready to go. All I had to do was put the sending unit in and a couple other minor things and then bolt the tank up in the car. So the tank is held in the car, pretty standard 80s fare with two tank straps, which you would think should be a 30-minute job, maybe. It took all night. So there's that.
Huh.
That's number one. I think it's our not error, our error as to why it took that long because the second strap took significantly less time than the first. I think that we unbolted the wrong side. I think if we had unbolted the strap at the front of the tank towards the front of the car, it has a very long bolt on it, which gives you some wiggle room to get things in place. Whereas unbolting
Right.
it from the back, it's the strap bolts to a call it a bracket that kind of hangs on a hinge from the car, and we couldn't get the strap up far enough to put the stud through the hole in the strap hanging down. So it took us quite a bit of struggling to do that, and there were three of us here. Um, it was me and Naomi and Chris Cavalieri were here working on this, and Chris is a certified Lamborghini master tech, so he's pretty good at fixing cars. But
Yeah.
he too was stumped by the '81 Toyota Cressida. So
Yeah. Well, they kind of have like a hinge point.
yeah, so it's got two hinge points. That's the problem. We didn't realize how long the bolt was in the back because I didn't undo it. Everything makes it look like it would obviously be the one by the bumper is the one that you unbolt and bolt back together. So, and then
Yeah.
that's what we all thought looking at it. That's how I took the car apart. And it wasn't until we got that first one done that Naomi was laying next to me out of the car and looking around. And she's like, why don't we try undoing the bolt at the front of this side and see if it gives us, because then we can, even if we can't line it back up exactly right, we can at least, because it goes straight up into the car, like perpendicular to the frame of the car, we could at least put a big awl through the strap and into the hole and like stretch it, like pull it over, and maybe we could make it work. But we didn't have to do that. We didn't have to take the bolt all the way out. Just dropping it, the bolt is like 4 inches long. And just by dropping it like 3 of those 4 inches, it gave us enough wiggle room to get that side of the tank back in. So it was the way to do it. And next time it will be a half-hour job, but this took forever on Friday night. So we got to that point on Friday night. And I said, all right, I think this is where we're going to stop. We'll pick this back up over the weekend. So over the weekend, I picked the car back up. First things first, filled it with fuel. Said, well, the best thing to do is to fill it with fuel, right? Start cranking it and go from there. So I filled it with fuel, cranked it over. It's not starting. This is fine. There's no fuel in the lines. There hasn't been for a long time. I made sure the fuel pickup was in the fuel. Definitely was. Made sure there was, no leaks anywhere. There wasn't any leaks anywhere. No fuel was getting up. It didn't seem like anyway to the engine because I could put some fuel directly into the throttle body, get the car to crank over. It would run until that fuel burned off and then just die. So now you have to go into diagnostic mode, right? Why are we not getting fuel from the tank to the front of the car? So my thought was I'll start taking the fuel system apart that I just put in the car from the front to the rear and test it individually each time, right? So go to the frontmost point and unbolt the connection and then crank the car over and see if we're getting fuel that far. So I unbolted it at the fuel filter, cranked the car over, no fuel getting to the fuel filter. So obviously it's not going to get to the injectors if it's not getting to the filter. All right, let's go a little further back. The next split in the line is like midway past the driver's seat. So I split the line there. All right, we'll crank it over. Crank it over. There is no fuel getting to that point. Okay. Next step is the line on the back of the fuel pump. Get to the back of the fuel pump. Start cranking it there. Nothing comes out the fuel pump. That's interesting. I did skip a step here. My first thing to do was make sure the fuel pump was actually working. So I did get under there with A couple of things. First, I used the multimeter, cranked the car over, made sure there was power getting there, and then held my hand in the pump, and you can feel the pump kick on. That was the first thing I did, just to make sure. Hey, obviously, the first thing I want to do is make sure the pump's working. Maybe I put it on backwards. Maybe I have the positive and negative, and the pump's pumping backwards. So I made sure that was correct. I had that all correct. The pump was pumping in the right direction. Okay, well, this is still weird. So now I'm like, I don't know what to do. The pump's pumping, but no fuel is coming out of it. Is there some kind of a kink in the line that I didn't notice when I was putting it together? Did I bend the pickup tube? Like, what did I do here? Like, when I was trying to put the tank in, did I bend something? I don't know. So at this point, I take the fuel pump back out of the car. So now I've taken everything I've done over the past week, pretty much thrown it in the trash. At least now I know how to do it quicker because I've already done it once, but nonetheless, super annoyed at this point. It's probably midday. Should have the car running by now. Get the fuel pump out. I put it in my hand, take a length of hose, put the length of hose in the fuel tank on the pickup side of the pump, take a battery, and literally run 12 volts of power straight from the battery straight to the positive negative terminal on this pump. Pump fires up, starts spinning, and just spins and spins and spins, and no fuel goes through it. I don't know. Weird. Yeah, I don't know if you remember back when I bought this part, and I said, hey, I'm not going to buy a cheap fuel pump. I'm going to buy a brand name, like actual nice. If it's a $20 fuel pump option, I'm going to buy the $70 brand name fuel pump because I don't want to have an issue where I cheap out and it winds up being an annoying problem. So,
yeah.
Turns out the brand name fuel pump did not help at all. So
the Denso.
It was a Denso, wasn't it? Yeah.
I thought you said Delphi.
Oh, Delphi. Sorry, there was a Denso available. Delphi was the brand available. Yeah. So, but yeah, Delphi again it's a name brand. You know what I mean? I didn't buy the John's Fuel Systems fuel pump that you could have bought for $20 on Rock Auto. I bought the Delphi pump, which we'll get to Delphi's customer service after this because it is horrifying. Delphi has an American branch, but they won't talk to you because the part came from Rock Auto, who apparently sourced it from somebody who sourced it from England. So they want me to send it back to England, and now I'm all ticked off. But that's beside the point. Pump won't pump at all. Brand new, goddamn off-the-shelf fuel pump. Shouldn't be a problem. That's my problem. So now I'm like, great, what am I going to do? I don't want to stop this project midday. It's a universal fuel pump. Somebody must have one. So at this point, Naomi's son Jordan was over. And he's like, all right, hold on. He's like, I know the guys over at AutoZone because he used to be a tech at a shop around here. He goes, let me give him a call and I'll see if I can, get one jobber price for you. I was like, all right, well, at least we try that. So we call AutoZone, and wouldn't you know, they have one on the shelf. It's a universal part. It's probably the same in every Japanese and European and maybe even American car throughout the 80s. It's a pretty simple cylindrical pump with a positive and negative line. That's it. So they had it on the shelf, and it happened to be another Delphi. So I'm like, all right, I don't know if I want to buy it on the Delphi, but it's what they got. I'll go for it. So I bought the part, brought it back. First things first, I tested it that way. Like, put the hose direct in the tank, ran 12 volts of power directly through it, and it immediately pumped fuel everywhere. So I was like, all right, we're better now.
That's so weird that it was running but not pumping fuel.
So there must be some kind of a diaphragm inside, right?
Yeah.
I didn't take it apart because I was trying to return it. But I assume it must have.
My coworker. He used to work for Delphi.
Oh, did he? I assume it must have some sort of diaphragm inside of it.
He used to work in fuel pumps too.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I assume it had some sort of diaphragm inside of it, and it must have gone bad at some point. Maybe it was on a shelf in a warehouse in Dubai for it's 140 degrees. Who knows? Nonetheless, it didn't work, and it was super annoying because it seems like that happens more often than it should, that I get parts that are junk out of the box, which is frustrating.
Particularly for you. I don't...
Yeah, and there's no way I did anything wrong.
I'll get something now, but I haven't.
But there's no way I did anything wrong to like break this because it's literally a positive negative wire, and I hooked it up properly the first time, and everything was right, So I get the new fuel pump, I get it in, I hook it all back out of the car, run the wires to it, and now I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? Because I have the whole entire fuel system apart, I haven't run any fuel through it. I ran some like aerosol carb clean kind of stuff through it. I said, let me actually run fuel through the lines one connection at a time. So if there is any junk in the system, I'll see it come out. And I'm glad I did that because when I went to that first connection and I plugged it in and I cranked the car over, I watched this like sludgy stuff come out of that old line because the I didn't replace the steel line into the car because that's fine, but it was full of sludge. So as I pumped the fuel through it, it pushed the sludge out first, and then it was pumping like crystal clear fuel out of it. So that actually probably saved having to do a fuel filter right off the bat because all that junk was in there. So I guess silver lining, that all worked out. So short version of a long story, got all that back together, get everything going. Fuel is going all the way past the fuel filter. It's definitely getting into the rail. I can see the return line having fuel dumped back into the tank. So the system is working. And the car is still not starting. So I'm like, all right, well, we obviously have fuel. I said, and just for, just double check, I'm going to crack the line at the end of the rail and see if it has pressure. Make sure that it's working properly. So I cracked the line at the end of the rail and it has pressure, fuel squirts out. I crank it over with that line off the end of the return line and watch, nice crystal clear fuel pouring out of it. I'm like, okay, so there's fuel there, no question. What is happening next? So at this point, I'm like, all right, well, we have to find the injector harness and see if the harness is getting power. So the harness was not getting power. So, all right, let's find this because this car has a cold start, like secondary injector. All right, let's see if there's power going to the secondary injector. There's no power going to the secondary injector. All right, well, now let's see if we can jump power direct to the secondary injector and see if I can get some fuel at least into the car and prove positive that it will run again. So we do that. I get power direct from the battery right to that secondary injector, and the car will idle because it's literally just pumping a mist of fuel into the intake manifold for cold start. But it won't rev on that because it's not enough fuel. It's just a steady mist going into the intake manifold. But proof positive that with power we can do something, right? So then proceeded to spend probably, I don't know, the next 4 or 5 hours chasing down any broken wires, any grounds, any leads, and any of the harnesses under the hood, and to the point where I was almost ready to give up. So I was quite frustrated. Another friend happened to be came over later that night. So he was hanging out for a little bit, and he's a Toyota guy, so he knows his Toyota stuff. And he goes, well, sometimes the ECU on these cars will fry. And if you don't have a good ECU, you won't have injectors. I was like, oh, yeah. I never thought of checking the ECU because the car, again, ran on fuel directly poured into it, right? So I was like, the ECU is probably okay, but I'm not the guy that knows Toyotas as much as you, so you know Toyotas, so let's take a look at this.
It ran with fuel poured in it, but the injectors weren't working.
Correct. But it had its spark, so I was like, well, engine management to me was working, you know what I mean? Again, I'm not a master tech here. I'm just a backyard hack learning as I go, right? So
yeah.
Regardless,
I mean it's cranking, so it's turning the distributor, right? It has a distributor.
Yes.
And it has a coil.
It has a coil, and it has what they call an igniter. So it's a big box on top of the igniter. So anyway, in my brain, the ECU was working because all that was working. And there were enough broken wires that I assumed, because the car, again, sat in the desert for 20-something years. Like, a broken ground somewhere can ruin the whole day, It's got to be something stupid. So he's like, well, let's check the ECU anyway while I'm here. So we start taking apart the passenger side dashboard because the ECU in this car is mounted on the bottom of the top of the dash pad. Just kind of a weird spot, like in the direct sun right there, but that's where it is. So we get the whole thing opened up, and he puts his hand on it, and he goes, oh. I was like, what? He says, that connector just slid like what felt like a foot, but was probably a few millimeters. He goes, maybe it was just disconnected. I was like, that doesn't sound right. He goes, do me a favor and give it a crank. I gave it a crank, and I'll tell you, man, this car started on like a half of a turn of the engine.
Weird.
And came down to an idle.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Just being up there on the top of the dash, heat cycles, vibration, and just like came
So the
loose.
clip the retainer clip on the harness is broken.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Old.
either somebody was messing with it and cracked it, or it broke over time. The car where I bought the car where the person lived was a
Yeah.
really rough dirt road. So if that clip had failed and they drove up and down that road enough and that harness backed itself off, that could be what parked this car back in 2001.
Yeah. Maybe.
You know, I think it was 01, 0102, whatever it was. It was 20 years ago at least. That could be what sidelined this car. That could be the whole story. You know, and here's this expert Toyota guy who happened to be like, well, ECUs can be an issue. Let's check it. So big shouts to Ruben, because without Ruben's help, I don't know where I would be, because I don't know that I ever would have got to that point. Maybe I would have, but he had the experience and the wherewithal to be like, hey, let's just check this point in the car. So he did. Got the car running. Beautiful. It
My Galant had a
skips.
broken ECU plug,
And sometimes it
and I
wouldn't
was
run
able
right.
to get it. No, that was when I got it.
Okay.
The tab was broken, and I was able to get a new one and switch
Well,
the pins
I
over.
was looking at it, and it's not a very long pigtail in order for me to work on it. I'm not quite sure how I do that. I was looking at some other ways to hold the clip in place.
You could run a long cable tie around the whole thing,
That's what's going to happen, I think, for now, at least, anyway.
but you would to depin it. There's a lock.
Right.
You open the lock, and the pins with the right tool come right out of it.
Yeah.
You don't cut the wires.
No, I wouldn't be cutting the wires. I'd try to find that harness clip. If I could even find one. I don't know if it even exists. It's probably a standard Toyota one, so somebody probably does make it, but I'll have to do
Yeah,
some
you'd be
digging.
surprised all the connectors you can buy. I
Yeah,
learned this.
I'll have to do some digging. But for now, I'm just gonna, like you said, I'm gonna wrap a giant cable tie around it and go from there. So the point of the story is the car runs. He was here for a while. He's actually his whole family's good friends with Naomi's whole family, so his wife and kid and everything were here and hung out for a while, had pizza. And after they left, I was like, all right, I'm gonna take this car for a quick jaunt down the street. I didn't want to go far because the further you go when the car dies, the further you got to push it back, right? So I went, put it in reverse, backed it out of the driveway. Transmission slipped a little bit. That made me kind of like, kind of nervous. Put it in the street, put it in drive. I hit the brakes. Brakes work. Brakes work beautiful. Brakes feel like they're brand new, which is bizarre also. Put the car in drive, drove the car down the street, maybe 100, 150 feet. Again, transmission slipped. I didn't go far enough to hit second gear. I just went, 25 miles an hour, hit the brakes, car stopped, put the car back in reverse, trans slipped again, backed the car up, backed it back in the driveway and put it in park, and there it is. I hadn't checked the transmission fluid of the car running yet because obviously the car hasn't been running since I've had it. I checked it when it was off and it seemed full, but obviously when the car is running, the fluid goes up into the transmission. So I did leave it idling in the driveway and check the transmission fluid, and there's no fluid on the stick. So obviously the fluid is low in the transmission. So that's the next step, is to put some training fluid in it, do a tune up on it. I have plugs, I have cap, I have rotor, I have wires, I have all that stuff, air filter, and see if I can smooth out the idle. Because I think if a tune up might be enough to smooth out the idle, if not, I'm going to have to probably do at least injector cleaning, which I wouldn't be surprised because again the car sat for 20 plus years. So, but hey, the good news is we're making like huge progress, right? So I
Right.
wound up spending like 12 hours that day working on it, but it was totally worth it in the end because in the end I drove the car. So this random on a whim $600 online auction purchase is turning out to be a pretty good car. I cleaned it. I posted a picture of it on my Instagram. I don't think it's on the Auto Off Topic page, but I mean, it doesn't even look bad anymore. I mean, you saw the picture. It doesn't look like a car that sat in the desert for 20
No.
years. It looks like a car that sat in the desert for maybe 3 years. So it's coming along pretty good. I'm pretty stoked. Not gonna lie. It feels really good to get to a point where you have this much progress on a car, and now everything is kind of gravy. So I just need to sort out some other stuff. This weekend's gonna be another big weekend of time and effort working on it. I haven't, unfortunately, had much time this week to do anything with other life events and life stuff happening, but I'll have some time this week, and maybe by next podcast I'll have the car with some miles on it. Thankfully, here in Arizona, I can do a 1 day or a 30-day temp tag and just drive the car around the block a bunch and sort it out. Do the, what do they call it, the 210, 220, 200 mileage tests. Drive it 2 feet, drive it 2 miles, drive it 20 miles, and drive it 200 miles and see what happens.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, if that's kind of what you got to do, and you put something together, right? Don't go far away until you've established that it will work. It's 2.1 miles round trip to the QT gas station down the street, so that should be my first drive, I think. Go down there, fill it up, and drive it home. So hopefully that'll be the report next week. There's nothing going on this weekend as far as anything during the day, so I should have plenty of time to work on it and get it fully tuned up and do a bunch more cleaning and detailing and get a set of tires on it that don't have cracks in the sidewall the size of the Grand Canyon, and go from there. So I'm stoked. And the next step after that will be shock absorbers, because the car rides like a Titanic. It's very floaty. It doesn't have shock absorbers, I'll put it that way. It's just on springs. Yeah, it's pretty junk. But yeah, that's my project car update. I think it's a pretty good one, actually.
Cool.
Yeah. Have you done any project car stuff?
No.
Perfect.
I looked at parts on the internet. I didn't do anything.
Carrying the whole team on my back. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's all fine. Oh, and I now officially have a cylinder head for that Honda. I think I mentioned that last week that we were getting it. I now have it. And I ordered all of the head gasket replacement parts, head bolts, timing belt, water pump, and timing gasket set. So I don't think I'll have that in time for this weekend, but that'll be possibly also worked on before next podcast. Fingers crossed. So.
All right.
Oh, and sorry, back it up. I did purchase plane tickets for Naomi and I to fly to a city in this great country of ours and pick up the next car and bring it home.
What?
Mm-hmm. You know what it is, but we can't talk about it yet.
I don't.
You do, because we talked about it.
Okay, maybe.
It's a car that somebody we know owns and is selling to me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're not talking about it till everything goes through. Just make sure everything goes through.
Okay.
So that won't be next week. That'll be 2 weeks. 3 weeks? Like mid-May. Actually, for my birthday weekend, we're going to go out and get this thing. So it should be pretty exciting.
All right.
So the good news is it's not a project. I can drive it home.
All right. You're definitely not coming to Philly with me.
Definitely not coming to Philly. Nope.
Okay.
Sorry. All right.
I will be at Philly Radwood.
It's what weekend is that?
With something. One of my cars.
What weekend is that?
21st.
Okay, so yeah, same weekend. I'll be going to a different city.
There's one in Cleveland on the 7th, but that's too soon.
Yes. I'll be going to a different city to pick up the car.
It's not too soon. I'm just busy. It's my son's, actually, shout out. So, Marco, it's your second birthday will be Monday. So this is being recorded on April 28th, 2022. And your second birthday will be on May 2nd, 2022.
Excellent.
So if you're ever listening to this ever again,
that'd be cool. But he's like 22 and listening to
it somehow.
When he's in this garage wrenching on his flux capacitor in the future, he can listen to his dad give him a happy birthday shout out. I like it.
The best.
I will also say happy birthday.
The best story that I have is that where you were born on a Saturday, and the Friday night before, you were actually due on like Sunday, they thought. So me and Brad were playing Forza till like 1 a.m.
Yep. I remember that.
And
because your dad is definitely a child.
Yeah, whatever. You couldn't go anywhere, man.
No, I am too. It's fine. We're both children. It's okay.
Listen, it was the middle of the pandemic. It wasn't like I could be out at a bar.
It was early pandemic where like everything was closed.
Yeah. So anyway, your mom woke me up at like 4 in the morning after playing video games all night, and that's how our day went.
Yep.
And then
You got
you
3
showed
hours of
up just
sleep and you haven't gotten any since.
you showed up
Yeah.
just before the day ended because I was like, let's do it. We want it today.
Yep. Well, happy
So,
birthday, Marco. So
yeah,
we'll let your dad slide with not having a Project Air update this week because
he was
you're preparing his birthday.
somehow. I didn't show him this. He somehow knew to go to the basement door and was like upset and like looking for cars.
Cars like
Because
real cars or cars like your stash of toy cars? That
Hot
is-
Wheels.
Yeah. Well,
Because and then his grandmother's visiting here from Arizona, and my wife's here, obviously. And they're like, well, that's because you always come up the stairs and you give him a Hot Wheels. I mean, I know it does every day, but
right.
if I get him one, I come up the stairs and give him one. So he made that assumption. I'm like, I don't.
He's
Yes.
established there is a secret factory of Hot Wheels cars in the basement. Listen, man, if I was 2 years old and I knew that there were stashes of Hot Wheels cars in the basement, I'd probably be trying to get down there myself too.
Yeah.
In fact, listen, I have a birthday also coming up, and I'll be 41 years old, and I still like to go places with the stashes of Hot Wheels cars that I know about. So it's totally fine.
Yeah, this is accurate.
It's not an issue at all.
So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, we had questions.
We did questions this week. Where do you want to start with questions, Andrew?
Let's start with the Facebook ones.
Facebook it is. Let me pull it up here on my phone. All right. So, as we always have issues with the algorithm with this stupid social media stuff, we've managed to figure out a way to get two people we know who know each other to at least talk on the Facebook page. So Joe and Craig both asked questions, but your dad did too. So, given the fact that we just talked about the electric Corvette, your dad's questions,
they're all real questions too. I'll hand it to them that they're not.
They're not goofy questions. Craig's question is very long, and I'll paraphrase it, but that's okay. We'll start with your dad's question. So big shouts to your dad, whose birthday is also in May, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's within a week of Marcos. So
yeah, he's what, the 12th? Ooh. Sorry, Andrew. Totally called you out on that one. Sorry, Tony. I know it's right before mine, and mine's on the 18th, so we'll call it that way.
It's around Mother's Day. It's like
yep. Good job. It's totally my fault. I did not. I was unintentional.
My dad's is around Mother's Day. My mother's is around Father's Day.
Perfect. Well, I will say happy birthday to Tony next week because closer to his actual birthday, and by then we'll have it all straightened out. All right. So Tony says, what do you think would be a respectable mileage range for an electric vehicle? What would be an acceptable amount of time it should take to charge said vehicle from empty to fully charged? So I look at this question as, at what point would you buy an electric vehicle for your only car? And I don't know that I could buy an electric vehicle for my only car if it couldn't have an operable range of 300 miles and be able to recharge back to about that range in about 10 minutes. That sounds obviously ridiculous, but that has to be something we shoot for because that's how I think of a road trip in a gas car. I tend to stop every 200 miles or so to get fuel, just to top off, stretch my legs.
Yeah.
200 miles is a good range because usually it's, a couple hours plus. You do that 200 miles, you stop, you fill up, you take 5 minutes to walk around the car or maybe run into the convenience store and grab a drink or whatever, or use the facilities, and you come back out and you're back on the road in 10 minutes. I think when there's no difference between a gas car and an electric car, that's when I'll be okay with it. I didn't want to say 200 miles of range because that would give me huge range anxiety and I'd be stopping at 100 miles instead of 200. So I think if I had 300 miles of range.
No, because a gas car on the highway will get you about 300 miles.
Yeah, depending on the car. Yeah, 300 to 400 miles. But I just think that's a comfortable range that at 200 miles, I can be like, all right, now I need to start thinking about fuel or thinking about, not fuel, but electrons. I know that I have another 100 miles to go, but now I have within that 100 miles to stop. I think that would make me comfortable.
I mean, you kind of want a little bit more than that, like 350, 400 probably, because if there's any type of cold temperature, it reduces it quite a bit. And if it's too hot,
I'm just
it
saying
reduces it a
ideal.
lot. You want it to average out to
Sure.
like 300?
Yep. I'm just saying ideal situation. 300 miles is the range I would need. Which I guess
Yeah.
maybe it's more than that, but 300 is the operable range that I would require to be comfortable driving an electric car across country would be 300 miles.
And depending on how you drive it, you get some regen out of it. And
you're not getting a lot of regen on the highway.
no, I mean, unless there's hills.
Along. Yeah, if there are hills, I guess like coming up to 17 here in Arizona. But then again, you also lose a lot more because you're climbing the hill too. So I don't know. I think on a long trip, it probably equals out a little differently just because it's a lot of highway driving and any hill you're going down, you've already gone up. So I'm just thinking I'm thinking cross country driving. I'm thinking going and visiting Naomi's family in Oklahoma or taking a trip cross country back to Massachusetts or driving for the weekend to San Diego or something. I think that a 300-mile operable range would be where I need to be. So whatever that 300-mile operable means, yes, does it need to be more for cold weather? Maybe, but I'm just thinking that I need 300 miles of operating range to make it work. And I thought that was low until you said that a gas car gets about 300. But I forget that because I drove that diesel for so long. That was my road trip car. And, on a good road trip, I could get 550 miles out of a tank. So I kind of forgot that. But yeah, 300 is probably pretty average. But yeah, that's my answer. What's your answer, Andrew? About the same?
Yeah, it's right around like 350, 300, 350. Because that's what my current cars get. So,
yep,
that's what I need. And then, yeah, I don't want to sit around for like 2 hours while the car charges.
No, it's got to be fast because that adds so much time to your road trip. When you consider the fact that you're doing a 20-hour road trip and you're stopping for 5 to 10 minutes for fuel, so that 5 to 10 minutes, if you stop, 10 times, adds an hour to an hour and a half. If you had to stop for 30 minutes to an hour every time, you're adding, 10 hours to your 20-hour road trip, and that's just not acceptable. So
yeah, I mean, that's for like a road trip car though.
But that's how I think about buying a car. I mean, it might be different if I'm buying a car specifically for a purpose. I mean,
that's kind of an edge case.
But if it's your only car, that's why I said it's your only car. If I'm buying for a specific
road trips,
I do it a lot.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You're an edge case.
But the question was asked to us, and that's my answer. That's what I would need. I might be an edge case, but I do a ton of road trips. My favorite thing to do is road trips.
If I had 350 miles of range, I could do one charge a week, just like one tank of gas a week. So the charge time wouldn't really matter. Especially if there's a charging place at work.
But now it's your only car, and now you want to take a road trip.
But I would also have a charging place at home, so it literally charge every time I park it. So like the range for like commuting back and forth to work, the range amount is doesn't matter.
Right.
As long as I can make it to work and make it home.
No, and again, if the car is
a charger at work,
and that's why I'm saying if the car is specifically for a purpose, if this car is just a commuter and you don't need to rely on it to take a long trip, then yeah, it's very dependent on your situation. I have a 65 mile commute every day total, so it's like 30 something miles each way. So I could get away with most any electric car for my commuting and just plug it in overnight and have it charged the next morning, right? But
yeah,
the other case with that is come home at night and there's a storm and there's no power. I can't drive to work the next day.
How often does that happen? These are edge cases, man.
Again, but we're talking edge cases, but I'm talking things that I need to have workarounds for.
This is like an edge case. No. How often do you lose power?
Often enough to worry about it.
Really?
I'd say so, especially during monsoon season.
Never lost power at this house, my house.
Yeah. No.
It'll blip like once in a while, but that's like once a year.
Yeah. Anyway, so that might be an edge case, but I just maybe less of an edge case is I drive home, I'm tired, I forget to plug the car in that night. What do I do the next day?
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway, I probably will not be buying an electric car as a primary mode of transportation anytime soon. I would
absolutely buy one. That's what we didn't talk about. The Lightning came out this week.
Oh, that's big too.
Or they started production. Yeah. Didn't come out.
I could see myself buying an electric car for a commuting vehicle with that, 60 miles a day of driving. But I would need to have something that I could also get in and on a whim drive to Seattle, because that's the kind of dumb stuff that I do.
Sure.
So, hey, again, the question was, what do you think a respectable mileage range would be? So that's just where I'm at. That's what I think in order for me to buy one. That's how I answered the question. Moving on, Joe Davis asks, what vehicle or vehicles would you like to see brought back into production and why? I'm going to make this hard mode, no Mitsubishis. Because we all say Evo, we all say Starion, none of the above. So those are my two answers, an Evo and a Starion. I'd love a modern Evo, and I'd love a modern Starion. And I
want a new Montero. The body on frame.
Sure, a full frame Montero. I'm into it.
Yeah.
Bring back all the classic Mitsubishis they don't make anymore, which is all the Mitsubishis. They don't make anything cool anymore, really.
All right. So non-Mitsubishi.
Non-Mitsubishi. That's the hard mode here.
Okay. All right.
I want a genuine, simple hot hatch. I don't particularly care which one it is. I know there are hot hatches out there. There's like the Focus RS and the new Corolla GR, but they're not a simple hot hatch. I want a nice, simple, like EK Civic Type R. I want a simple GTI, not a turbocharged, complicated, heavy, like just a lightweight, front drive, fun to drive hot hatch. Something with 200 to 250 horse or less.
So you want a Civic Sport, but a hatchback.
I want something that's less car, though. I want something that's simpler. I know that regulations won't allow me to have, an 18.
They're pretty simple.
Yeah, that's not attractive. It also has to be attractive. Bring back a hot hatch that's attractive.
So a Golf.
Give me a Golf. No, they canceled Golf. They don't make a Golf anymore. They only make a GTI. Golf is no more. There's no more Golf in the States. Or anywhere, I don't think. It's canceled altogether. So if you want to buy a hatchback Volkswagen, you have to buy a four-door. It has to be turbocharged.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
But it's not what I want. I want simplicity. I want the world's most simple car. I want a simple Honda Civic. I want no turbos.
Nissan Versa.
But I want it to also be good. That's the problem here. There's nothing between absolute junk and not simple. I want simple but not junk. I want a Mirage with a handling package. That's what I want. Which I guess isn't bringing back a car anymore. But we'll call it a Mirage Cyborg R, but it'll be based on the Mirage and be better looking and only have two doors. So they should bring back the Mirage Cyborg. They never even sold it here in the first place, but that's what I want. Wait, no Mitsubishis. Damn it, Andrew. Why'd you make that rule up?
I don't know. Because there's nothing else that I would want.
Yeah.
I mean,
a 914.
They still make them, but if they sold them here, like LC70s, to Land Cruisers, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, because they basically
just need to sell them here.
Modern Montero. Yeah, I don't know why they don't. I wonder if it's a crash ratings thing or just.
Oh, it's definitely a crash thing.
Okay.
Definitely.
Anyway,
I drove one. It has a 5 mile an hour bumper, but that's it. The door panels are still like 80s door panels that are 2.5 inches thick.
So screw it. You want a Montero back, and I want a Starion back. We're going back to Mitsubishi's.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, you know what? I'd take a new Cressida. Give me a rear drive inline six sedan.
Oh, I know what I want. I want a 2-door coupe WRX.
Okay, like a GC.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
Or any WRX that's not terribly ugly would be nice. You want a 2-door coupe WRX without cladding on the side. I mean, are we talking about the exact car or a modern rendition of the old car? Because if we're talking about a modern... If we're talking about a modern rendition of the old car, then yeah, just give me a brand new 1999 Civic Type R.
Yeah,
That'd be amazing.
definitely.
Like that's 100% what I want. And I don't want to pay 200 grand for one on Bring a Trailer that has 100 miles on it. I want an actual one produced yesterday. I want like South Africa
Oh,
got the
oh,
Volkswagen Rabbit.
there.
South Africa had the Volkswagen Rabbit until like 2013. Like that's what
All
I
right,
want. I want a brand new Volkswagen Rabbit in 2022, but it's actually an 83 car.
I got it.
Okay,
I got it. 510.
perfect. Give me a brand new
Like,
510.
yeah,
Yeah.
give me the Versa 510.
Yep.
whatever, whatever you got to call it to make it work.
Yeah. They still own the
Rear-wheel
Datsun name.
drive.
They sell cars as Datsuns in India. Yeah, give me a simple rear drive Datsun 510. You know what?
Yeah.
I need to buy a 510. That's always been my list. I'm going to ask you a question, Andrew. This is
All right.
actual questions. We're getting off listener questions for a second. Is there any car on your forever bucket list that is still fairly affordable that you've never owned?
Ooh, good question. Well, yeah, I would say one of the French hot hatches I'm looking for.
Okay.
Still pretty affordable. They're like 10 to 15.
Okay, that's a good choice. So
Yeah.
I've had, since I was, I don't know, mid-teens, my like adult dream garage, what I thought I was going to have as an adult, is a 3-car garage with a first gen NSX, a Datsun 510, and a original Mini Cooper like 1275S. That was going to be my 3-car garage. Like when I'm an adult and I have money, those are the cars I'm going to have. So 15-year-old me would be horrified to learn that I haven't owned even one of those cars. For a while, NSXs were affordable. I never jumped on one. 510s, you can still get a 510 sedan for less than 15. And you can definitely still get a cheap Mini Cooper. And I've never pulled the trigger on any one of the 3 cars. And I've had, and you've had, countless cars. And none of us have ever bought any of these one cars we always wanted. I don't understand why. So maybe I need to make a 510 happen. Anyway, moving on. Next question. I was thinking about the other day. I was talking to somebody at work about like my dream car garage since the dawn of me having a dream car garage was 510 original Mini and NSX. Never owned any of them. I gotta change that. I gotta have at least one of them. All right, Craig Simas asks, and I'm gonna try to break this down a little bit because for those of you who don't know Craig, he's long-winded here. What are your thoughts on form versus function failures? Example, rear turn signals being red instead of amber. Then he says something about it's all just stupid. Same thing like with not allowing cars like the Skyline in our country. Was that politically driven between GM and Ford and lobbyists to not want competition? I don't think so. Let's do the first part of this question first. What are your thoughts on form versus function failures? Example, rear turn signals being red instead of amber. I prefer amber turn signals. I think we talked about this before, did we not, on an episode about turn signals?
We did, and it's like kind of a weird thing. I don't know. Manufacturers are kind of given the choice on it, I think.
For some reason, in the United States, it's not a law either way.
Yeah.
In Europe,
My Volkswagen's got solid red.
Yeah, in Europe and
but if the car is sold in Europe, sorry, it's amber, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they have to have amber turn signals because it's been proven that the percentage of rear end accidents goes down a ton when you have a yellow turn signal versus a red because it differentiates it from the brake light. And I don't know why that never became a thing here. It doesn't make any sense, but it never did.
Yeah.
Especially where there are so many lighting rules in this country.
Yeah, I think a lot of American cars through the 50s and 60s just had red taillights, so it just kind of stayed.
Yeah, it never changed.
As an American thing. And then Japanese manufacturers didn't want to make 2 taillights, although sometimes they did.
Yeah, sometimes they did.
But for the most part, they didn't. And they would just have amber.
Yeah, I think the reason we didn't get cars, well, that's probably the question, like the Skyline or early Evos or early STIs in this country, it wasn't anything to do with them. It wasn't anything to do with lobbyists or Ford or GM saying, no, we don't want these competition. It was more the Japanese makers not thinking there was enough market here to warrant spending the money to meet the U.S. regulations, because crash tests here are different than everywhere else. Even though the Japanese cars have safety standards, they have different crash tests. For some reason, it's not like a world standard. Different emission standards. For some reason, it's not a world standard. And that just made it cost prohibitive to take a vehicle that you had designed to be a limited production vehicle and federalize it for a whole other market when you weren't planning on making that many of them anyway. All these
cars
cars
that did had like different bumpers.
Yeah, but all those cars like
while.
Skylines and Ford Focus Escort, Ford Escort Cosworths, and the early Evos, like those cars were nothing but homologation cars. So they only had to make a certain amount in order to run in these race events, and they weren't going to make enough to support the American market if they thought they even could sell it the American market in order to, justify the cost of making that car for the American market. I think that's the biggest reason we didn't get them.
They tried the Glanvier 4 and they probably didn't sell very well. So,
but they also only planned on selling a limited number here. They were like, we're going to sell 3,000 of these cars or 2,500, whatever it was. Numbers escape me right now because I'm dumb. 3,000.
Now,
300.
I'll tell you what I don't like: new Kias and the turn signals in the bumpers.
Yeah, it's dumb.
They're way too low. Like I thought there was a law about like light height.
There's a law for brake light height, but not for turn signal height.
Weird.
I think that was a misstep in because if you remember back, I think we talked about it before. That's why the third brake light exists, because vehicles like
they are
the El Camino and the Chevy station wagons in the 80s had taillights mounted in the bumpers down by the ground. So they put those up.
And like I think I was behind a Kia, like a Forte. Is that the sedan? They still make that sedan?
I think it's a Forte. Yeah,
it's the smaller Kia sedan.
Yeah. No longer
I was behind one today in stop and go traffic, and it's literally like they are not in your line of sight.
No,
like they are like I'm looking at the top of the deck lid, bottom of the window, top of the deck lid. That's where the brake lights are.
Yep.
And then at the bottom of my vision, I can see this flashing yellow light. That's a turn signal.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's like really dumb. Don't like it at all.
Yeah, that's weird.
Like, why wouldn't you just integrate it into that light?
I don't think I've noticed too much, but I can picture the lights down there. I don't think I've noticed that they're the actual turn signals are down there.
Yeah, they're hard to see.
Interesting. I'll have to keep an eye out for it. That is it for Facebook questions. What do you have for Instagram? You gonna pull it up, Andrew?
Yep. All right, I got it here. Let's see. Judge_Mills. Miata predicament. So this is his car. The car has special seats, blue Alcantara inserts, but I'm too tall, big for them. Should I foamectomy the factory seat or get something aftermarket? Does an aftermarket seat ruin the vibe?
I say aftermarket.
Yeah?
Yep. 2 reasons. One, it's a special edition Miata. The seats are part of that special edition. If they don't work for you anyway, you might as well put them aside and save them, so down the road you can restore the car back to stock by putting the nice blue seats back in it. Because if you foamectomy them, the problem is the seat material stays the same and you lose a bunch of the height of the foam inside, and the seats become stretched out and worn looking faster. Normally not a concern because you're just making the car more comfortable, but I think if you have the special edition seats, you might as well save them and put them back in when the car is done later, because I think foamectomy, which is what Miata guys do, they basically take the seat foam out and shave a few inches off of it, because it's now you gain more seat height, but you wind up probably damaging the seats beyond being nice anymore. So I would probably just take the time to buy a seat that fits you properly. If you're going to do any modifications, you might as well do it right. If it's something you can't afford right away, maybe save up for that. I think you'd be happier with a brand new seat that you fit in and fits the car better than you would be trying to cut up your factory seats to fit you better. How does that sound?
I would not do a fixed back.
No, I wouldn't do a fixed back on a road car unless you were
Um,
doing a just track car, which this is not that. I would do
I
something
would do,
adjustable.
yeah, you can do like a Corbeau adjustable, and then if you get like the only thing is the seats don't seem that expensive, but then you also need brackets and sliders, and that's like an extra $200.
Yeah, it adds up pretty
Um,
quickly. I've actually never
so
put aftermarket seats in a car. I know you have, but I never have.
yeah, so the Planted is a pretty good name company that makes brackets. They're pretty good brackets. That's what I've had in the Subaru,
Yep.
the Demerits, and then it was like a double slider, I think, from Corbeau or Sparco, and then there are Sparco seats.
Yeah, and I
But
think
you could
the
do,
beauty of it, it's a Miata, so you can. There's 1,000 manufacturers making parts for those cars.
yeah, because then you can actually get a seat. You can look up like what's the widest seat you can fit,
Yep.
And for tall guys, and I'm sure somebody has it figured out.
Yeah, and I'm sure. I mean, I think he's up in the Pacific Northwest. There's got to be a race shop there at stock seats too. That you can go down and try some out. So you don't have to buy something blind on the internet when it's a comfort
And
issue.
even, I mean, honestly, I'm fine with like just one in a car.
Mhm.
I kind of like that sometimes. So if it's just for you, you can leave the passenger seat. You can buy
It
two.
saves some money and it gives it kind of a neat like club racer look.
Yeah.
The only reason I would say to not do that is if you actually do participate in track days, and your local track day sanctioning body requires two matching seats. Some unfortunately do that. So,
Yeah, it only depends if you have instructors.
correct.
They have to have the same setup as
Yep.
you.
They want
But
a matching seat for the passenger for that. In
there's
that
like
case,
there's so many groups now that are doing open lapping without instructors that they don't care.
right?
So
Yeah. No, I would probably change the seat. I think it's the best move for the car. And if it's something you care about, and like you talk about the vibe because it is a special edition, um, I'd probably try to save those seats the best I could. So,
all right, cool.
next.
Jalopy _ Jeff _ AZ.
Former guest.
What are the coolest affordable Radwood era vehicles?
Coolest or will get you the most attention?
I don't
At a
know, but
Radwood.
there's probably a huge list. So I don't know. Let's do like a couple.
The list is very long. I mean, you can still
Yeah.
buy a sub $10,000 944, and that's like I guess,
He already has
and
that.
Jalopy Jeff already has that, but that's one of the answers you would get. You can still buy a $5,000 Miata. You talk about a car that's. Do you just want to go to Radwood and be like, noticed at Radwood? Then you can spend $5,000 to $7,000 and import some weird Japanese K car, and you'll
Yeah.
fit in. You won't fit into there. You'll have like a crowd around your car all day, but then now you're stuck with a K car. If you want something fun, like I said, that a 944, a Miata, even a second gen RX-7, they're really hard to find, but you can find a non-turbo for sub 10 grand. That's a great Radwood era car. The list of affordable ones is 1.5 miles long because literally the rules for Radwood are any car built between 1980 and 1999. And I would say cars from like 93 to 98, there's still a laundry list of sedans that are not worth anything that can get you into a Radwood.
I mean, you can
You
probably
can
go
show
any
97
number.
Camry you bought for $300 and you'd get
Yeah.
in.
Any number of random GM products from that era are still pretty cheap.
Yeah, and they're
That
not.
aren't like the performance
Yeah,
models.
they're not good.
necessarily.
They're not good, but they're interesting.
No. Yeah.
If you found something, one of the more interesting ones, like a what was the Oldsmobile with the V8?
The Alero.
No, the Alero was the Grand Am based one. There's a bigger one, the Aurora.
Aurora.
I bet you could
Right,
buy
yeah.
like a $2,500 Aurora, and that car was like, besides Cadillac, that was like GM's flagship car in the 90s, and they were so proud of it, and it has so much cool like weird technology, and it's a front drive V8, and you might not want to own one for a long time, but it might be interesting just to experience that world long enough to buy the car, clean it up a little, take it to a Radwood, have it be like this dumb Radwood car, and then sell it on to his next owner.
We know someone that's got a Riviera that they'd probably sell it to you.
No, we don't. We know somebody has a Riata.
Oh, a Riata.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it happens to be in the same
Same thing to
state
me.
as Jeff.
Same thing to me.
Yeah. Well, the Riviera was different. The Riviera was a W-based platform, which is the same as the Grand Prix, and it came in a supercharged V6 with that weird,
Nerd.
like... Well, don't forget, I used to work at a Buick Chevrolet Oldsmobile dealer in that era. So I know these cars better than I should. The Riviera was kind of neat. It's the same kind of vehicle that the old Aurora is. Like, it's kind of their flagship. But yeah, any of those cars would be kind of neat. And then if you wanted actually a good GM car from that era, I would gladly drive a 4-door Cadillac STS. Like dark green over tan leather with the Northstar V8. They're like 300 horse in 95. They were actually pretty cool. So I would even unironically drive that. I think that'd be a good car.
I mean, a Q45 is pretty affordable.
Yeah, Q45. I know some people will sell you one of those.
Yeah.
And if you came over here on a day when I was being frustrated by it, you might even get a good deal on a Cressida. Talk about a Radwood era car that's cheap. I paid $600 for that thing. I can take that to a Radwood. So yeah, there's the list is 300 miles long. So I think you already own one of the better affordable Radwood era cars. You know, he has a 944. Like it's a fun sports car. It's got aftermarket support. It's a well-loved car. It's a cool-looking car. It kind of defines the 80s rear-drive sports car, doesn't it? You know, the Starion, the RX-7, the 944, the Supra, they were all that same basic platform. Because same, not platform, but same basic thought process. So, I think you already own the best one. Stay with that.
All right. Sigma_Woodcraft. What exists for Rad Miata alternatives? Light two-doors under maybe 20K. And then there's a secondary follow-up. Also, Suzuki Sidekick Vitara thoughts.
Okay, light two-doors under maybe 20K. Maybe you should buy Jeff's 944.
That's going to say 924s, 944s.
Yeah, I have a weird love for 924s. It probably comes from my love for narrow body Starions. It's just a different look. I think of it as the purest, the more pure example of what the car was supposed to be. The 944 was designed as the 924 and then added flares later, which both are cool in their own right, but a well-sorted 924 is pretty cool and super cheap. There was a 924 Turbo in San Francisco Craigslist like last week that ran and drove and was $2,300.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I kind of, if I hadn't already committed to another car, I might go buy that. So it's super cool. 924 is definitely cool. You can also say Miata again. And then the one that I've been obsessed over lately is Honda Civic hatchbacks, EGs and EKs.
Yeah.
So, and those are definitely sub 20 grand and two-door. And again,
I mean, you could get a clean Mark III,
like Volkswagen
GTI. Yeah.
A good Mark III GTI is getting up there. They're not as crazy yet, but if you found like a nice, solid, not rusty Mark III with a VR6, you'd be getting a lot more. I think you get a lot more car for less by buying something else, unless you wanted that. Because the problem with Mark III GTIs, they rotted away like
it's a Mark III GTI.
They rotted away like crazy. They are good looking when they're sorted. They kind of have little box flares too. The VR6 ones are worth a huge premium over the 4-cylinder cars because the 4-cylinder cars were 2-liter non-turbos and they were not fast. They were just 8-valve, like 110 horsepower, maybe. Not great.
Yeah.
Not great cars. The VR6 is the way to go. On that note, though, if you wanted to buy something Volkswagen from that era, I would stay away from the Mark III GTI and go with a VR6 Corrado.
Oh, right.
You know, they're not known for their reliability, but once they're sorted, they can be good. And they're little.
I suppose they're kind of light, but
they're pretty heavy, but they're lighter than a modern car, and they're cool looking.
Yeah, that's the definition of light, right?
And there's two different versions available. You can get the G60, which is the supercharged 4-cylinder, or you can get the VR6. So I think those are cool. I've always liked those. Those cars have always been kind of. I like them from afar, but I kind of look at them like 3000 GTs. Like they're maybe a little bit more difficult than I'm willing to live with. So I've never really pulled the trigger on one of those either.
What about Prelude?
Hard to find. Hard to find a good one.
Yeah.
Hard to find a good one. There used to be a guy who worked with me for a short period of time who had a Prelude. And the guy who works in the office next door, he owns the realty office next door, actually has a Mark III Super Turbo. When he bought the Mark III Super, he was looking for Preludes, and he gave up looking and he bought a Mark III Super instead because he couldn't find a good 5th gen Prelude. So,
what a Del Sol?
I don't like Del Sols.
No?
No.
I thought you did.
I mean, they're neat looking. I wouldn't want to own one because they're heavy for what they are.
It's kind of cool, though. How heavy? I mean, how heavy could they be?
They're heavy enough that they're not very high performance. That's the problem. So they're heavier than the equivalent Civic at the time. So I do like them. They're neat. A clean one of those has gone up a ton in value too. I guess it depends on what you want to get out of it. Do you want a car that you can potentially make some money on in the future? Then yeah, buy something like a Honda or a Corrado or something that's more, I guess, loved. But I don't know.
All right.
As far as Grand Vitaras and Suzuki Sidekicks, I am all about Suzuki Sidekicks. They're cool. They're fun for off road. Don't think I'd want to live with one every day because they are a little bit shitboxy. But I could definitely have one as a off road toy, something to go out in the trails with because they're so short wheelbase. All right, one more question. You got it?
I got it.
You got it.
Throttle by Cable. Would you rather own one $7.7 million car or $7,000 cars? I think I know the answer, but you might surprise me.
Does that math work out?
That's what he wrote.
Yeah, that's crazy. I guess it does.
Yeah.
So the reason he said that was the picture I posted for the question episode was a 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB Competizione that was actually the class-winning car for the GT class in the 1967 24 Hours of Le Mans.
I double-checked his math. It does work out.
Yeah. It randomly showed up at Cars and Coffee here in town. Like, he just drove it in off the street. Like, it wasn't a car show. It wasn't a concours. It's literally at Cars and Coffee. And the dude just rolled in with a car that he bought at one of the auctions during Monterey Car Week for $7.7 million. Like, talk about a flex. and he showed up with like an hour left in the day. Like, there was just like, all of a sudden there's this actual race winning 275 GTB Competizione, like, just rolled in.
If you own that car, you don't get up before noon.
Maybe, yeah. Also, I would 100% drive that car if I owned that car, which is cool. To get to the question, though, I don't think I'd ever want to own 1,000 cars.
It's just like, I don't want... No, it's 7,000, $1,000 cars.
No, he said $1,000, $7,000 cars. Would you rather own one $7.7 million car or 1,000 $7,000
cars?
Okay.
I was like, because I definitely don't want 7,000 $1,000 cars either.
But you do want 1,000 $7,000 cars? I don't think I want that.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
it's too many cars.
Too many cars. A phrase I possibly never would have uttered in my past, but I will say that.
I mean, your motto is to just buy another $1,000 car.
You have for years told me that I own too many cars, and I've always said there's never such thing as too many cars. I will here go on record and say that 1,000 cars is in fact too many cars. I do not know what I would do with 1,000 cars. That being said, I don't know what I'd do with one $7.7 million car either.
You just said it. You drive it.
I wouldn't be able to drive it like I want to drive it, though. I enjoy driving old cars. I know a lot of people park them and just drive them like to events. I enjoy just driving them to drive them. Also, going back to our earlier conversation about road trips, I enjoy getting in an old car and doing a 500-mile weekend somewhere. I don't think I'd want to do that if my only old car was one $7.7 million car. So
It's a hypothetical question.
think
You just drive
I
it.
think I'd rather just meet in the middle somewhere. And could I have like $170,000 cars? Does that work out better? Because that I'd be okay with. Because somehow in my brain, 100 cars is not too many cars, but 1,000 cars is. I think 1,000 cars. I think of like Hot Wheels cars, and sometimes I forget what one I have and I buy the same one again. So
Yeah.
that would happen with real cars if I had 1,000 real cars. I wouldn't even know where the keys were. Imagine having the keys or 1,000 cars. Gotta be so frustrating. And
Oh,
batteries.
the maintenance,
Jesus.
registration, insurance.
I'd have to have, you have to have a guy or like a fleet of guys, a
Oh,
staff
so
of
much.
guys.
This is already costing like millions of dollars
Yeah.
to upkeep the fleet of
Yeah, I mean,
1,000
also
cars.
if you have the money to have one $7.7 million car, you don't just have one $7.7 million car. It's part of your collection of probably 30 or 40 cars. So
What if it was your only? What if that was it?
my daily
You just
commuter,
saved up.
yeah,
Just saved up. That was it.
one
That's
$7
the only
million.
car you could buy. Yeah.
If that's the scenario, and I don't care about the future resale value of the car, then my
Yeah.
answer is one $7.7 million
Taking
car.
it to the grave.
My answer is one $7.7 million car.
Yeah, exactly.
Catch me driving back to New England in my 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB.
It's got an aluminum body,
Perfect.
right?
Uh,
It's not going to rust.
Whatever. I'm only going there to visit anyway, so I'll just visit around the snow. It's fine. I could support that.
It's just a car. Drive it.
So hypothetically, if those were your only two options, I would choose the one $7.7 million car.
Oh, absolutely.
100%. Because I would listen. I have anxiety bad enough as it is. I can't imagine the anxiety I would have if I had to deal with a fleet of
'Cause what's-
1,000 cars.
What's 7.7 million right now? Like I can get an original 4 GT probably.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Or a 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB.
Yeah.
Now you couldn't get,
Cool.
you probably couldn't buy the 1967 class-winning Le Mans GT 4GT40,
No.
but you could win the class-winning Le Mans GT Class 275 GTB.
Yeah.
So yeah, $7.7 million opens up your budget pretty good. There's not a lot that costs that much, so you're more limited by people willing to sell you their car than you are trying to find a car. But yeah, I'm into it. Let's do it. Want to play the lottery? Win $7.7 million.
Hey, somebody won the lottery Powerball in Arizona.
Oh, really? What did they win?
Yeah. It was a lot. It was like
Maybe
400 million or something.
maybe it was that guy.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't me. That's all I know. So stay tuned till next week when you see what $7.7 million cars we buy at the lottery. You know what would happen if I actually had $7.7 million? I would probably
I don't
prove
know what would
myself
happen.
wrong, and I would probably have $1,000, $7,000 cars within like 6 months because I couldn't contain myself.
You absolutely would.
Yeah, it would be a
Just
problem.
buy a
It
junkyard.
would be a problem. It would be a big problem. I could not put my words where my mouth is. It would definitely be. It would be very quickly. It would get out of control.
I'll get to him someday.
Yeah.
Sir, you have 1,000 cars.
You know what I'd do? I would call companies like Icon and places and be like, just give them the cars that I already have. Be like, here's my Colt.
Yeah.
Give me an Icon Colt.
Yeah.
Please.
Give me a Singer Colt.
Yeah, 100%. That would be rad as hell. That's what I would do with that money. I would have like dumb resto mods of everything.
Yeah. They just give you back a Singer sponsored, like a Singer sewing machine sponsored Colt.
Or they give me a Porsche and it would say Colt on the back. I'd be like, I don't know what happened. Anyway,
We couldn't find parts of this,
Yeah.
so we built you a Porsche
built you a
because we could get
Porsche.
parts for it.
just a Colt body grafted to a rear-engined flat six. Which I'd be totally down with, actually, by the way. All right. Well, I think that's an episode, Andrew. You want to give out those
Yeah,
socials?
sounds good to me. Yeah, follow us on Facebook, Auto Off Topic Podcast, Auto Off Topic on Instagram, Auto Off Topic on Twitter. I'm Wrightsonanger on Instagram, Wrightsonanger on Twitter. And Brad, where can they find you?
They can find me at the one and only place at the moment, Instagram, TSISS350.
Cool. So as always, keep Crows analog and name for the road.